Hi, this is Dr. Will Horton of NFNLP, talking to you from my office in Deerfield Beach, Florida. And what I thought I'd do today is try out some new technology. I've had an iPad for several years and also an iPhone, but I've never used the iMovie application. So tonight I'm trying that. A couple weeks ago I started talking about resolutions and why people give up on resolutions so quickly. Well, what I thought I would do would be talk to you about another reason why resolutions don't work. Why do they fail? I talked about the whole word resolution means resolute. Resolute means it's done, it's over, it's accomplished. It means you have to do it. But in our culture, it's turned into a worldwide thing, people make a New Year's Eve resolution, and it's more of a wish list because they want to do it. They kind of need to do it, whether it's stop smoking, lose weight, quit using substances, make more money, whatever it is, it's a wish. So I don't say they're New Year's resolutions, they're New Year's wishes. What's a resolution? It means you're going to do it. Well, how do you do it? Well, the first thing you have to think about is, if you're really resolute, it means you're going to take the action you need to get there. You don't just think about it. You don't just say, well, maybe I sort of want to do this, right? You begin to take those little steps that are necessary, whether that's reading a book on the subject, whether that's actually committing to doing something. One of the things many people can do is let people know you're going to do it, so there's some outside pressure. Outside pressure can actually be a good thing, because then if you don't quite make it, there's people there to hold you accountable. So, but what's the difference between a want and a need? Well, we all want a lot of things. I want this, I want that, I want this, but your needs are very few, right? But something you truly need becomes a must. And we all have different musts in our lives, right? Some people must have this and must have that. But once something becomes a must, you're much more likely to do it. If you think I must take care of my children, I must pay my bills, well, you're going to do everything in God's green earth to accomplish that fact, right? It's not like, well, I want to take care of my kids. I must take care of my kids. I must do this. I must do that. So when you begin to think about it that way, one of the things you have to do is, if you have a New Year's resolution, rather than think that you want it, begin to think that I must have it. What is something you want so bad that you're willing to really take all the steps necessary to do it? I don't know what that could be. Only you know what that can be, right? But to do that, first of all, you have to tie into some kind of emotion. You have to ask better questions. As we always say in NLP, you ask better questions, you get better information, you can get better results. But do we do that with ourselves? So when you're thinking about a resolution, this year I want to make more money. Okay, that sounds good, right? But is it a must? What would it do for you? When you really begin to think of it. And you don't just ask it once, let's say it's make more money this coming year, have more clients. Well, what would that do for me? Well, I'll feel more secure, I'll be happy. Oh, that's great. What else would it do for you? As we'd say, and all of us know, you keep asking that question until you get several answers. And eventually, while you're asking that question, you're going to get to something that clicks, that resonates deep within you. Whatever it is. And this is what's interesting about doing this on ourselves. What really motivates you? Is it security? Is it safety? Is it significance? Is it connection with other people? What is the driver? I was working with somebody who wanted to increase his business, and he had all these reasons. And when he finally says, what else would it do for you? We kept doing this over and over again. What else? What else? He got to, well, then I'll be a living example of what I'm teaching. I said, well, is that important to you? And he goes, yes, I don't want to be one of these people that, is hypocritical. I teach this stuff, but I don't do it. So then he found his driver. So whatever your driver is can become important to you. So what is your driver? What is your emotional connection to that goal? That's something many people don't even think about, right? And then it becomes that strong emotion. And that's how you begin to raise your standard. When you look at someone that does something consistently that other people don't understand, it's because it's a must for them, right? They have to do it. If you know someone that's in great shape and they exercise, they don't tell you they want to exercise. They don't tell you they need to exercise. They tell you they must exercise. And when you must exercise, it changes everything. you will find a place to work out. Yes, even when you're out of town on a business trip, or you're doing whatever you're doing. Many people know when I travel internationally, especially when I used to do a lot of international trainings, in my contract it said you will find a hotel that has a health club or a gymnasium attached, or one I can use while I'm there. And I told that to some other trainers, and they go, well, why would you do that? You're only going to be gone, whatever it is. I said, well, I mean, do you think you're going to eat while you're off doing a training in Malaysia or China or the Mideast? Well, of course. Well, to me, exercise is one of those things. It's basically a must. So that, to me, it becomes a standard. I have to do this. And once it becomes a standard, you do it. And also then your peer group begins to understand it. So for my exercise, who's my peer group? Well, it's people that exercise. It's not people that say, let's just lay back and relax tonight. My peer group is people that like to exercise. I'm doing a lot of business on the east coast of Florida right now. And, I've been blessed. I stay in a nice condo, literally right on the water. And the office currently used for the Live Free Online Addiction Training, which is one of the projects I'm driving right now. There's a health club in the building, which is kind of nice because the founder of that company and a couple other companies, exercise is part of his routine. He likes to work out really early in the morning, then go to work, right? And you can see it by looking at him. So again, it's about your standards. It's what is your drivers, right? And again, when you think about making a resolution a must, the thing you have to look at is your peer group, right? We all have different peer groups. You have work peer groups, family. Family's not really a peer group. They can be, but they don't have to be. So that's one thing to consider. But when you're thinking about this, when you're looking at this, who's your peer group, right? Jim Rohn was the first, and my dear friend Tony Robbins talks a lot about, the law of averages. When you look at 5 people, and so does my dear friend Kevin Hogan, if you look at the law of averages, the 5 people you associate with the most, if you look at their income, your income's probably in that same generality, right? In that same sphere. Well, they've taught that a lot for prosperity and business training, but also, did you know it's also true for things like your physical fitness? If you're in shape, you're going to have friends that are in shape, right? If you want a happy marriage, you need to hang out with people that are in a happy, committed relationship that are actually doing it. Yeah. If you want to be sober, you need to hang out with clean and sober people. I mean, this just becomes rippling out, and it also begins to point out, as tribal creatures, as creatures of habit, as people that like groups, you can have multiple groups. It doesn't just have to be one group, right? You can have multiple groups. So what you want to begin to do is look at who's your peer group, right? And reach out for that, because, that begins to make it different, because that peer group, you're equal with a lot of your peers. You want to be equal. You want to live to the standard they live to. I've heard a couple people tell the same story about there was a general who was talking to someone about his troops. And he said what he always thought was interesting is younger troops, the young enlisted and young officers. He goes, what he always wonders is while they're in the military, many of them, especially like the Marine Corps and Army Rangers and certain units, many of them, this will be the highest standard they ever have in their life, right? And then, you run into them a few years later after they get out, they're not in shape, they're not successful, things like this. And so he was speculating, are people inherently lazy? Are people inherently, slothful? He goes down this list. Or do they need somebody literally, kicking them in the ass 24/7 to get them to really do the mission they need to do? Well, Anthony Robbins tells the story that, from his viewpoint, and I've heard other people tell the same kind of story, where, no, actually, what happens when you're in the unit, when you're in the military, when you're in that unit, you're surrounded by your peer group who want to do whatever it is you want to do. And especially when you get into the higher performing peer groups, let's say even in the military, there's a higher standard. Same when you look in a corporation. When you get to I did a sales training a couple years ago, and there was a few people there that were like the core, double star, whatever that company called their sales team, because they were constantly outperforming. Well, they had their own little peer group. That was their standard. They were always trying to outdo each other. And I've seen it in Ranger units, SEAL units, Marine Recon. That becomes the standard, and you keep wanting to go up. That's why there's all these groups of CEOs that get together because that's their peer group. If you work for a company and you're the CEO, you don't have any peers in your company. You need peers from the outside that you can help raise your standard. So if you want to make one of these resolutions really stick, is first of all, find someone that's done it. Find someone that's done it and begin to make them part of your peer group. If you can't make them part of your peer group quickly, you could do it in imagination, because as we all know, your mind doesn't know the difference between a real or a vividly imagined event. So if you're vividly imagining that these people are in your peer group, but you have to do it regularly like you would your real peer group, well, suddenly you'll find your standards raising because you want to be like this person or that person, whoever it happens to be. So maybe your peer groups, a Tony Robbins and a Deepak Chopra and I always pronounce his name wrong, Brendan Burchard. That if that's part of your peer group because you want to be that kind of trainer or speaker, well, that should be in the back of your mind, right? Maybe you can't hang out with them yet, but if you begin to vividly imagine it, well, then it raises your standard, because you'd be thinking, well, what would this person or that person, think of my presentation today, right? It begins to raise your standard. And quick story, as you know, a couple of years ago, I started taking acting classes again. And again, a couple of people asked me, well, you've been doing theater for 35 years. You're pretty good at it. You're professionally trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Why are you taking acting classes? Well, first of all, you get better at things you do consistently. And the way you get better is to get with a group of people that are serious about it. And yes, you may be in a play, or, I've done a few films, be in a film, but that's not the time to practice, right? You don't practice when the game starts. When I was doing competitive martial arts, you don't practice when you get to the competition, to the tournament. You've already practiced back there. So one of the things about a class, whether it's an acting class, an NLP class, any kind of class, that's a place to practice your skills. Also, I got surrounded by people that were serious about it, that wanted to do better. And, it's like when you look at really elite actors, people are surprised when they find out, the Tony, Robert De Niro, many of these top flight actors have acting coaches, take acting classes. Meryl Streep, Hugh Jackman. I mean, the list goes on and on. They have acting coaches, speech coaches. They're practicing their craft. So I wanted to get into that mindset, and that is, and I think it's improved my skills. And I'm noticing a difference. So, it was, again, I wanted a different peer group. So what is your peer group, and how can you raise that standard? Whether it's take a class, whether it's go to a seminar, whether it's read a book, whether it's in your mind, develop a new peer group and do those kind of things. So this was just a little test. I wanted to play with my new technology and have some fun with it. I'm going to work on the lighting and the shadows. I apologize for that. It won't be there next time. But I'd like to thank you for joining me. And as always, on this chilly evening here in Florida, of course, everything's relative. What we consider cold in Florida, if I was still living up in the Chicago area, I would call it balmy, So we all have that. So I'd like to thank you for joining me, and I look forward to